I think we have a great guest.
I think we have an amazing guest
that we can bring in. The one and only Briahna Joy Gray can join us on this conversation, picking right up on our conversation on Manchin. Of course, Briahna, former National Press Secretary for Bernie Sanders, co-host of the Bad Faith podcast, contributing editor of Current Affairs, and all of that good stuff. It's great to see you, Bri. Thanks for coming on with us.
Good to see you, Briahna. We missed you.
I missed you guys too. It's such a pleasure. Congratulations. This is huge.
Thank you.
Really
all right, before we get into serious stuff, I think I have a lot of respect for your design eye.
I know.
So give us your unvarnished feedback on the set and the look and all of that, because I haven't asked anyone else, but your view I actually respect on this.
Well, you two get top marks. Your girl loves a brick wall. You guys always look very dapper personally. You look well put together. You look gorgeous. And the set, the desk, Sagar, I want to give you credit for the desk, which I know you worked very hard on.
Right the way to my heart. You know exactly the way to my heart.
The way to Sagar's heart is through
this desk,
commentary.
through an acrylic desk manufacturer. Serious.
Like a great mix of. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was saying, like jokes aside, this is something I've been curious. We were just talking about, Crystal was, about how some House progressives had come out and been like, well, we maybe-ish may not vote for this thing if it doesn't have climate infrastructure and more. And then you obviously have Manchin, who's out there, who will basically just declare whatever he wants, and it's pretty much accepted as gospel by the White House. What do you think what does it tell you as somebody who worked for a campaign where the central promise to you by Biden and them was, we're going to listen to you, and even on some of these promises, which they've reneged on and more, like politically, what does that say about the state of the left movement right now?
Well, I think it was a little foolish to believe any of those promises, to be honest, especially without any genuine commitments. I mean, Joe Biden barely went on the record. He, outside of saying simply that, Bernie Sanders and the progressive wing are going to be a part of the administration, those kind of vague platitudes. Look, I am both heartened by the fact that so many progressives are going on the mainstream news right now and calling the corporate ties should have been calling out the whole time, in which Bernie Sanders really made his bones with back in 2016. But I will confess, and maybe this is my brain being overly cynical, that there's something a little bizarre about the coordinated nature with everyone seems to have discussed that Joe Manchin's incentives are driven by his Koch donors, as opposed to the people who live in West Virginia. To your point before, Crystal, obviously it's true that West Virginia is one of the most economically disenfranchised states in the union, and that a whole panoply of what are called progressive programs, which are in fact just regular programs, would inordinately inure to their benefit. So the question has always been, why isn't Joe Manchin willing to act on their behalf? Why is he opposing all of these policies that would help his constituents? And the fact that just now people seem to have been given permission to go on Joy-Ann Reid and say what was always obvious, it's heartening, but it also begs the question, why haven't they taken these stands before? Why haven't they forced this issue on any number of important issues, including the fight for 15 a few months ago?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, and are they serious, right? Like, it's one thing to go on and to send out a tweet, to do a cable news appearance, et cetera, But, okay, are you going to actually draw a hard line? Are you actually going to make your vote contingent on anything? To me, that's very much still an open question. And I do think this dynamic with Manchin is incredibly important to understand, because elite media, because they have no understanding of the state of West Virginia, they just assume whatever Joe Manchin says, because he's the only Democrat who can really get elected in the state at this point, that whatever he says about what people in West Virginia want, they take that as gospel, when in fact what he's really doing is sort of like carrying water for Koch and other corporate lobbyists and interests, cloaking that in the mantle of like, oh, this is really what West Virginians want. And since media doesn't know any better, they just kind of take his word for it.
Yeah, if Joe Manchin, and any politician this is true of, if Joe Manchin doesn't feel more of a threat from losing his constituency because the true narrative is out there about him not actually respecting their interests, if that's not a bigger threat to his political advances, his ability to earn money, his ability to maintain power, then the withdrawal of the corporate backing that he has, then he's always going to choose the corporate backing. And this is what, people like Ryan Grimm, who've been writing about these things, studying these things for a really long time, always say, they've got power, we've got people. We're never going to be able to outspin Joe Manchin. You're never going to be able to outmaneuver him from the inside the way that some of these progressives seem to be arguably in good faith trying to do at this point. But what we can do is start to try to make it so the consequences of him doing the wrong thing are felt because he's not able to maintain power, because he's no longer able to spin this web where he deludes even his constituents into thinking that he's doing the right thing. And talking about some of these liberal touchstones, these cultural issues, that'll keep folks in his back pocket. But talking about where the money goes and how the money that is coming to him is causing him to not represent the economic interest of people in his home state, I do think that's a much more effective narrative for people to start to hit. Again, though, to your point, contrast what these progressives are saying to what Joe Manchin is saying. He's been pretty steadfast and certain. I'm not voting for X, Y, and Z. I'm not doing this if it's not bipartisan, knowing full well that they're never going to be 10 Republicans that get on board. The progressives are still using this kind of flim-flam language. I might not get on board. You might see me not voting for this, which makes me feel like it's a bluff that's going to get called.
So that's actually what I mean, I've asked you this a million times, but like I see it happen over and over and over again. And say what you will, but like, you know, I know a lot of people who were involved in the Tea Party movement and they're laughing at AOC and others. I even have friends who are like, do these people know anything about politics because they worked in the Freedom Caucus and others, and they're like aware of, you know, that I host a show with you and of some of these left debates. They're like, I can't believe that they just sit there and go along with Pelosi. They said we would have been crucified by our base and by our other members of Congress if we acted this way. What do you make of that?
Yeah, I hate to reopen old wounds, but it's difficult to ignore the gravity of a political moment in which the 6 to 10 progressives, however many you want to call like real progressives in the House, literally could have kept Nancy Pelosi, one of the least popular politicians in office, including among Democrats, from being Speaker of the House. Someone who some polls indicate have as much or more of a toxic effect on down ballot races than the progressives that people are always hand wringing about. Nancy Pelosi was up for the speakership on January 3rd, and if a handful of progressives had decided not to vote for her, she would not be Speaker of the House, or in the alternative, she could be Speaker of the House, but with actual concrete concessions having been made to the left, including those that could really implicate the power dynamic that exists right now as they're trying to pass these major bills. So the question becomes, if you weren't able to fight, willing to fight rather, back then when the stakes were ultimately so low, there was no COVID relief bill or unemployment checks or vaccine rollout hanging in the balance where you could argue, okay, we need to just do this so that America can survive, so the world can keep on ticking. No, the only thing that hung in the balance was voting for a woman who's largely reviled by both political parties and who still wouldn't do it. That's what gives me some pause about their willingness to follow through in this moment. Of course, I hope I'm wrong. I'm always happy to be proven wrong on these things.
Yeah.
So I think your point about Nancy Pelosi is actually really important, though, because there was just this new third way autopsy of Democratic underperformance in 2020, some of which I thought was correct. But of course, they had to go on like, and it's, by the way, it's also the left's fault. Never mentioning, right, that Nancy Pelosi is so unpopular. I mean, she has been like a weight around the neck of every Democratic candidate for more than a decade now. I can tell you, when I was running back in 2010, right, Nancy Pelosi was the boogeyman, and she still is today because she embodies this sense of like elite condescension. I don't even think it's about a particular policy or anything like that. It's this sense of like, this person is looking down her nose at you. No one ever wants to talk about that. And how she may be, she honestly, as I'm thinking about it, the Democratic brand is such trash in most of the country. Like, you have to run as far away from the Democratic brand as you possibly can. Nancy Pelosi is as much a part of creating this incredibly toxic brand that has caused the decimation of the Democratic Party in rural America as anyone else.
There were literally studies at the same time that the mainstream media was crowing about how Medicare for All, which is overwhelmingly popular, even 49% of Republicans support it, a minimum wage, which again, won with 60% of the vote, a $50 minimum wage won with 60% of the vote in Florida, even where Donald Trump won. They crow about how all these so-called progressive policies are down ballot poison. But there were actual polls that demonstrated that Republicans ran just as many or more ads during the election season trying to get the Democratic Party to Nancy Pelosi and her ilk as they did the AOCs of the world. But there's never any introspection about the harm that is done by those kind of figures, especially since there's no upside for Nancy Pelosi. She's not inspiring anybody. She can certainly raise money, but as we've seen now in this new small dollar donation world, so can AOC. That is why she was able to withstand more money being spent on her race to unseat her in this cycle by orders of magnitude than anybody else and still be safe. And despite having that kind of protection, despite being insulated by the vagaries of the corporate Democratic Party, it is frustrating not to see her have a more full-throated response to the party that she said she was running to be oppositional to. I hope this is the start of us seeing something different, but I got to say, after the last 5 months or so, I'm not overly sanguine about that possibility.
Yeah, we need to see some stronger language to start with. Right now, it's all, as you said, it's very sort of squishy and like, maybe we'll
not.
See, and no clear,
Right.
like, this is what we require. Very different from the no salt, no dice type of line that you hear from the right-wing Democrats. Briahna, so great to have you. Thank you so much. So great to see you.
Thanks, Briahna.
My pleasure. Good luck.
And thank you guys so much for watching. Sagar, what's the pitch? Where can they find us? All the good stuff.
Okay, everything down in the description notes. If you want to become a premium member and you want to watch the show full uncut and listen to the show full uncut, right down there in the description links. We are 100% powered by Supercast. Awesome company, awesome technology, which if you're a podcaster, I actually recommend that you check out. Also, you can listen to the show if you like it for free. It's always going to be available here as clips, and it's available as audio with breaks wherever you get your podcast. I highly recommend for the free people that you check that one out because we're beating the New York Times. Maybe we haven't mentioned that already. No worries. Yeah, no big deal. We're the Captain Now suits. Sorry.
I actually wanted to say something really quick about why we chose Supercast as our sort of like technology platform, because I'm not a big, like Sagar knows more about the tech stuff than I do, but I thought this was really cool. They enable you to have personalized RSS feeds.
That's right. For every user.
So
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, for every single user. So every single premium subscriber gets their own personalized RSS feed, which we may play with a little bit as we go on some of the capabilities.
Actually, it's kind of awesome. So like, we could say like, hey, so-and-so, if you're in Texas, like we're coming to Texas. Or like, hey, if you're in New York, and that way you don't have to bother like everybody. There's just some really cool ways that you can use it. And also it's a lot like Substack. Like we have the relationship between the payment relationship in terms of our account and more, whereas Patreon does not give you that. They just give you the emails. Yeah. There's a lot of other different stuff. It just
allows us to sort of like be more directly connected to you versus like this platform having the connection.
It's more in our ethos of like the direct relationship with our users. Like we own, our relationship with our audience, and we always just want to be 100% like true to all of you. So anyway, if you guys could do us a favor, go ahead and hit subscribe here on the YouTube channel, podcast, all that stuff as well. But honestly, here's the main ask. If you like our show, just share it with somebody. I was talking with somebody and they were like an expert in the podcast world. And I was like, when you have one call to action, like what should it be? He's like, dude, organic share. So if you guys like the show, share it with someone and just tell them to check it out. It means the world. So many of you, we love you guys so much. So thank you.
You guys are so awesome. I think over the weekend, we're going to be posting a few things.
That's right.
Post from a clip from the interview we have this week, Pete Davis on Crystal Kyle and Friends. We also are going to be back with you for a full show on Monday. So guys, have a great weekend and we will see you then.
Stay tuned.